Hey, good afternoon to you. It's now 5:06 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, we'll be joined by Karoline Leavitt from the Trump campaign at 5:30. Get an update on how that's going. I was tickled to death by an interview that the View women did yesterday with a guy called Colton Hughes. Colton Hughes is a pretty impressive figure, smart young man. I think he was recently placed on Forbes' 30 under 30, just to give you a perspective on his age. But smart guy. My impression of him is that he is politically inclined to the left. He is a contributor at a bunch of different places, to include CNN. He's written for a lot of mainstream publications. He is a black man who rejects the race essentialism of the modern left. That's a fancy way of saying how racial prejudice is the way that the left operates these days. Far too many, of course, do. And he's against that. He thinks that way lies doom and chaos. And he's written a book on the subject that came out in February, and the name of the book is The End of Race Politics, Arguments for a Colorblind America. I guess The View finally got around to letting him on their show so he could talk about the book. And the women of The View were all on their guard because, one, I think they could detect it. He's smarter than them, for sure. He's also very nice. He was patient, insistent where he needed to be, but patient with them. And he absolutely ran circles around the entire table. And they're all in on the race stuff. They're race obsessed. Racial prejudice is the order of affairs there. And Colton Hughes is warning them against it. And the audience is listening to Colton Hughes' arguments and going, man, this guy's got something to say. They like it. You can hear the applause because he's just saying things that are common sense, stuff that a decade ago that almost any normal American would be uttering. Here's a little bit from Colton Hughes. I want to get started on this because it's just so fun to listen to. Again, very patiently running circles around the women of The View.
My argument is that we should try our very best to treat people without regard to race, both in our personal lives and our public policy.
Of course.
And the reason I wrote this book, thank you. The reason I wrote this book is because in the past 10 years, it has become very popular to, in the name of anti-racism, teach a kind of philosophy to our children and in general that says your race is everything. Right? And I think that is the wrong way to fight racism, and that's why I wrote this book at this time.
I'm sorry, baby. Yeah. Can I just point out that there is a reason for that? You know, when I went to school, getting any information about anyone's race was not taught. No history, there was no black history, none of those things were taught. And here in America, 100 years ago when I was a young woman, that's how people saw you. That's how they judged you. So I think, I don't want to say it's your youth, but I think you have a point, but I think you have to also take into consideration what people have lived through in order to understand why.
Did you get the idea that Whoopi's being a little reductive, at least? I mean, it's possible that her schooling experience included glossing over things that should have been more emphasized within the classroom. But is she really saying that nothing about the civil rights era was taught in school? Nothing about the, slavery? Nothing at all? It was just completely glossed over?
There has been such a pointing of very specific racial things, like women couldn't get into colleges. If you were a black person, there are a lot of colleges wouldn't accept you, trying to equal the playing field.
She does kind of sound like she's feeling around in the dark, right? Like she's like, well, I've got to find something to hang my hat on because he is dismantling the entire worldview that I'm supposed to be advancing right now. But he sticks with it. And in fact, he talks to Whoopi and Sunny Hostin, who has no idea what she's talking about, but she's like a lawyer or something, and she's insisting that Colton Hughes is the one who's a bad man.
I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote.
Oh, just to be clear on how he answered Whoopi. He says, you may have experienced that. I'm not invalidating that. That's fine. He's like, but things are definitely changed, and it's okay to acknowledge that. He said, as a kid in school, and remember, he is much younger than she is. We watched Roots, he said, in school. Things have definitely changed, and it's okay to say so out loud. You can't constantly suggest that the whole country is frozen in carbonite. And now Sonny Hostin would go on to smear him and suggest that Colton Hughes has been co-opted by, I forget the phrasing she used, but something like the right and white nationalists, and you're just being used by them. And he patiently took offense to that and explained why it's wrong.
I don't think I've been co-opted by anyone. I've only voted twice, both for Democrats. Although I'm an independent, I would vote for a Republican, probably a non-Trump Republican if they were compelling. I don't think there's any evidence I've been co-opted by anyone, and I think that that's an ad hominem tactic people use to not address really the important conversations we're having here. And I think it's better, and it would be better for everyone if we stuck to the topics rather than make it about me with no evidence that I've been co-opted.
I want to give you the opportunity to respond to the,
I appreciate
the criticism.
I appreciate it.
Oh, what a coward. Oh, other people are saying this, that you're awful. It's not me that said that. I just wanted to tell you what other people are saying so as to use that to make you look bad. He's like, well, that's ad hominem. You're not actually addressing the substance of my argument. Oh, other people are saying it.
No evidence that I've been co-opted by anyone. I have an independent podcast. I work for CNN as an analyst. I write for the Free Press. I'm independent in all of these endeavors, and no one is paying me to say what I'm saying. I'm saying it because I feel it.
The women are all sitting around going, what's that like? What's it like to have your own views and not be forced to adopt the views of your paymasters here? Here's Colton Hughes continues, and he says, you know, it's interesting. Race relations were actually improving in the United States for a long time, up until 2013. And then things shifted, and he explains why he thinks that is.
So in the past decade, it feels like racial tensions have gotten worse.
Alyssa Farah Griffin.
Do you see it that way, and what do you attribute it to?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at all the data, it finds that race relations were getting better until about 2013. That year, you had a majority of black, Hispanic, and white Americans saying race relations were good, and then you just see it nosedive. And 2013, you know, people like to blame, Republicans like to blame Obama. Wasn't his fault. Democrats like to blame Trump. It was actually just technology. We all got social media and smartphones, and we had videos being promoted in the algorithm that were unrepresentative, and it created this impression that racism was on the rise when, in fact, it had been on the decline for decades.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think there's something to what he's saying, but I think he's kind of hand-waving away the role that Obama and the left played in trying to stoke racial division. Remember, 2014, the year after he's talking about 2013, is also the death of Eric Garner and Michael Brown, and then we get racial division being stoked by the left, sold as a part of, especially the Michael Brown thing, hands up, don't shoot, literally predicated on lies in order to whip up racial frenzies in the United States and divide Americans against each other. So you've got to account for that in all of this, and of course Barack Obama played a huge role in that there. More from Colton Hughes here. Joy Behar, of course, has things to say, which is hilarious, and he handles it well.
I have a question, because you write that the anti-racism movement, there are a couple of people, I don't even know who they are, maybe you know.
Robin DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo,
Yeah.
Ibram Kendi, for instance.
Okay. Well, you
Racists is who they're talking about, racists.
say that is just another form of racism, and you even say it has a lot in common with white supremacy.
Yeah.
How can you compare those two things? You talk
compare
about
them because-
anti-racism, you're comparing it to white supremacy.
They call themselves anti-racist. How could they be racist? She asks. I hope that she's just dumb enough that was a sincere question.
Because they both view your race as a extremely significant part of who you are.
It's your destiny. It's your destiny. Your race is your destiny. You're defined by your race. That is a white supremacist view. That is a prejudicial view. That is an identitarian view. This is one of the unfortunate dominant views of the American left, at least in their elite institutions, and especially in their elite institutions, that your race defines you, that your race establishes your outcome in life, that you have no choice but to succumb to it. That is racist to make those assumptions. So, of course, he's describing this to Joy Behar. She's like, what? I thought they were anti-racist. No, you're not paying attention.
An extremely significant part of who you are. So white supremacists, they obviously say, we all know what they say, okay? Neo-racists like Rob DiAngelo, they say that to be white is to be ignorant, for example. Well, this is a racial stereotype, and I want to call a spade and say this is not the style of anti-racism we have to be teaching our kids. We should be teaching them that your race is not a significant feature of who you are. Who you are is your character, your value, and your skin color doesn't say anything about that.
The View is losing the audience.
You're misrepresenting what Robin DiAngelo's position is.
It's in her book.
But so here we go. Here we go. Thank you.
What? Stop getting involved. There's a debate was about to break out. Whoopi's like, okay, here we go. Look, we've got some tension at the table. Sonny Hostin insisting that's not what Robin DiAngelo says. By the way, Robin DiAngelo definitely said that in her demented book that far too many unhappy women were reading in 2020. Oh, I'm a racist. You're not a racist. Stop it. Will you stop reading these stupid books? This is that Robin DiAngelo book. That's what I mean. You read books, believe me. Read more books. Don't read Robin DiAngelo. Or if you do, read the other books that tell you how stupid it is. Coleman Hughes is like, no, look. I'm not under any illusion. I know racism exists. When I say colorblind, the left hates the phrase colorblind society because they don't actually want that to be the end goal. But Coleman Hughes says it is the end goal.
We have very different cultures all living together in one country, so I'm not going to deny that. But I view this notion of a colorblind society similar to the idea of a peaceful society, which is to say it's an ideal, it's a North Star. And the point is not that we're ever going to get there. We're not going to touch it, but we have to know when we're going forward and when we're going backwards. And we're going backwards when we're doing woke kindergarten in San Francisco.
Now, he goes on and say, okay, look, we've got problems in the country that we need to address. So how do we address them? If we're not using race as the measure, oh, that person is black, therefore they're disadvantaged. Therefore, we should give them this stuff. That person's white, therefore they're advantaged. Therefore, we should take that stuff away from them. That is like the most idiotic and, of course, poisonous way to conduct public policy. Coleman Hughes is like, we should just look at people who are disadvantaged. What if we started there?
The default right now in a lot of areas of policy is to use, black and Hispanic identity as a proxy for disadvantage. And my argument is that you actually get a better picture of who needs help by looking at socioeconomics and income. That picks out people in a more accurate way.
Again, common sense prevails. So much so that the average IQ at The View, the audience there is like, yeah, that sounds exactly, because it is exactly right. And well delivered. And by the way, more patiently than most of us would be willing to be. Coleman Hughes is being very patient as he describes this. And the women don't even know how to handle it. I bet you they were wishing he got angry at them as they were making these ridiculous claims.
And not my question, but when you say that socioeconomics picks out people in a better way than race, when you do look at the socioeconomics, you see the huge disparity between white households and black households. You see the huge disparity between white households and Hispanic households. So your argument, and I've read your book twice because I wanted to give it a chance.
No, she didn't.
Your argument that race has...
She's lying. She didn't read it twice.
...no place in that equation is really fundamentally flawed, in my opinion.
Well, there's two separate questions. One is
fewer people clapping, a smaller cheering section just for Sonny Hostin.
Each racial group is socioeconomically the same. I agree with you. They're not.
They're not, and the stats show that.
Of course, I agree with that fully. The question is, how do you address that in the way that actually targets poverty the best?
Great.
And what Martin Luther King wrote in his book, Why We Can't Wait, is he called it, we need a Bill of Rights for the disadvantaged. And he said, yes, we should address racial inequality. Yes, we should address the legacy of slavery. But the way to do that is on the basis of class. And that will disproportionately target blacks and Hispanics because they're disproportionately poor, but it will be doing so in a way that also helps the white poor, in a way that addresses poverty.
Now, that makes sense to literally everybody, unless you're a woman on The View, unless you're one of the hostesses there. Sonny Hostin is angry at this notion. She thinks this is a terrible thing. How could you help poor white people? How can you, that should not be allowed. Their skin color dictates they should not be helped. This is Sonny Hostin's view. And so now she starts arguing. This is hilarious. Okay, actually, I'm going to hold through the traffic for this because I want you to hear this. She starts arguing that she knows Martin Luther King better than anybody, and clearly she does not. Coleman Hughes clearly knows the scholarship around Dr. King way better than she does, and it becomes apparent really quickly. Stay with us. I've never interviewed Coleman Hughes. I've always admired him from afar, though. I've seen a bunch of videos of him on the internet. He's written this great book, The End of Race Politics, Arguments for a Colorblind America. And he went on The View yesterday, hilarious, and the women had no idea how to handle him. Again, he ran circles around them. And Sonny Hostin had suggested at one point during the interview yesterday that she actually knows what MLK meant when he was out, doing his public work. And he was for reparations. He was for racial distinctions for everything. That's kind of how Sonny Hostin describes it here. And Coleman Hughes says, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. Here's that exchange.
But as you are a student of Dr. King, I'm not only a student of Dr. King, I know his daughter, Bernice.
Uh-oh.
Right? So I'm going to get to my question.
Go ahead. Go right ahead.
I think the premise is fundamentally flawed. You claim that color blindness was the goal of the civil rights movement, based upon Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, content of character versus the color of skin. Bernice, Dr. King's daughter, points out that 4 years after giving that speech, actually, Dr. King also said this: a society that has done something special against the Negro for hundreds of years must now do something special for Negroes. He also said in 1968, it was about less than a week before he was assassinated, this country never stops to realize that they owe a people kept in slavery for 244 years. So rather than class, he did write about that earlier on. Right before his death, he made the argument for racial equality and racial reparations. And so your argument for color blindness, I think, is something that the right has co-opted. And so many in the black community, if I'm being honest with you, because I want to be, believe that you are being used as a pawn by the right and that you're a charlatan of sorts.
He's not a Republican.
So how do you...
He's never voted for a Republican.
You've said that you're a conservative.
No.
You did. You actually said that in the podcast that you did 2 weeks ago.
I said I was a conservative.
Yes, you did. So, but my question to you is, how do you respond to those critics?
Okay, let's give it. Let him answer.
First thing I think it's very important. The quote that you just pointed out about doing something special for the Negro. That's from the book Why We Can't Wait that I just mentioned.
Yes.
A couple paragraphs later, he lays out exactly what that something special was.
Yes.
And it was the Bill of Rights for the Disadvantaged, a broad class-based policy.
But he also says you must include race.
No, he didn't. He says it's
Yes, he does.
Okay, well, everyone should go read the book Why We Can't Wait. Let's not get sidetracked by that.
Sonny Hostin, again, has no idea what she's talking about. Coleman Hughes is like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And he literally said we should be focused on helping people based on their disadvantage in life and not sorting them based on race. That's the bad way of doing things. Hey, stay with us. Karoline Leavitt comes up next from the Trump campaign, and she's here on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hey, good afternoon to you. It is 5:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Short time ago, Donald Trump, President Trump, was outside of the wake of a fallen NYPD officer by the name of Jonathan Diller. Here's what he had to say.
The Diller family you'll never be the same. You can never be the same. And we have to stop it. We have to stop it. We have to get back to law and order. We have to do a lot of things differently because this is not working. This is happening too often. It's an honor to be here. And again, I want to just thank all of you folks for allowing this. And Bruce, thank you. Bruce has been a friend of mine for a long time. He's done an incredible job out here. But this is such a sad occasion. The only thing we can say is maybe something is going to be learned. We've got to toughen it up. We've got to strengthen it up. This should never be allowed. Things like this shouldn't take place, and to take place so often. So
yeah, the cop killer in this case had 21 previous arrests. So Donald Trump going to honor the life of this fine NYPD officer. Meanwhile, across town, Radio City Music Hall is the site of a big Democrat fundraiser. They're trying to raise $25 million from filthy rich people for Joe Biden. It involves Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. They're pulling out all the stops to try and rescue the flailing campaign of President Biden. Here to discuss that, Karoline Leavitt is here, National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign. She joins us on the phone. Hello, Karoline.
Hey, Vince. Thank you so much for having us. And you really just perfectly laid out the stark contrast in what we witnessed today between the former president and crooked Joe Biden.
It really is amazing. You know, I heard today Karine Jean-Pierre claim that Joe Biden has at least placed a call to New York Mayor Eric Adams to express his condolences. But do you find it odd that Joe Biden didn't take it upon himself to call the family here? Of course, Donald Trump has.
Well, how nice of Joe Biden to call Mayor Adams, whose policies led to the killing of Officer Jonathan Diller. Mayor Adams, Joe Biden are complicit in the loss of this brave New York police officer and this hero, and our hearts and prayers are with the family. I'm not surprised to hear that Joe Biden has not called his family. If he did, I'm sure the White House would have said that. That's why they're not saying it, because he didn't. And just like he didn't call Laken Riley's family to apologize to them, he actually mispronounced her name at the State of the Union and then apologized to her killer for calling him an illegal immigrant. So this is the type of man that Joe Biden is. He's a pathetic, corrupt career politician who doesn't actually care about the people that his policies are impacting. President Trump does. That's why you saw him embrace Laken Riley's family several weeks ago in Georgia, and that's why you saw him show up to the wake to pay his respects to Jonathan Diller's family today.
You know, I'm even seeing corporate news outlets admitting that Donald Trump does have a good relationship with police officers. Oftentimes when he goes to events anywhere around the country and they have police that are there to help arrange for, things like just protection for the president, former president right now of the United States, that he oftentimes will spend time talking to those cops, and he appears to receive a lot of gratitude from them. Can you give us a sense of what it was like for him today, on Long Island as he attended that wake?
Yeah, well, first of all, President Trump is widely respected and beloved by our law enforcement community across the country. And to your point, anytime I'm on the road traveling with the president and our team, our motorcade passes through beautiful communities in this country when we go from the airport to the venues of our events. And there are always local and state law enforcement who have their cars lined up, their motorcycles lined up to protect the president. They do it proudly and honorably. They're always saluting him and praising him. And he always makes a point to greet every law enforcement officer that he sees because he deeply respects what they do. And again, that's why he took the time out of his day today to fly from Florida to New York to attend this service. He was honored that the family extended an invitation to him personally. He met with every single family member inside. He took some photos with some of the young children inside who were asking for them. And of course, he spoke that length with the widow, Stephanie, of Officer Jonathan Diller, who's now their 1-year-old son will have to know what it's like to grow up without a father. And it's tragic. The president spoke on it, leaving the wake. I know him well. I could tell he was very somber. How could you not be? And he just said, he was deeply honored to attend, that the family invited him, and that this is happening to too many families across our country. How many more police officers need to be killed? How many more innocent Americans need to be killed before Joe Biden does something? It's clear he's not going to do anything, and that's why it's so critical we reelect President Trump.
It is remarkable. Meanwhile, like I said, across town in the Radio City Music Hall in New York, there's a big fundraiser today for Joe Biden, and all of the living Democrat presidents, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, in attendance to try and raise money for him. What is the Trump campaign's impression of that event? The Democrats are bragging that they're going to bring in $25 million. They're saying that this is going to greatly enhance their war chest, well above and beyond any money that the Trump campaign currently has access to. What do you make of it?
Well, frankly, we think it's disgusting that Joe Biden is still moving forward with this ritzy, glamorous fundraiser tonight in New York, where the city is mourning the loss of one of their officers. It's a grave, frankly, slap in the face to the New York Police Department and, of course, Officer Diller's family. As for the fundraising goes, look, we've never expected to raise as much money from Silicon Valley and Hollywood like President Biden and the Democrats always do. But we also are confident that we will have the resources necessary to build out an army across this country of volunteers and paid staff, especially in key battleground states, to get out the vote for President Trump on November the 5th. And I'll also add that we are significantly outpacing Joe Biden when it comes to small dollar donations. In fact, our average digital donation online is $4. And that shows the strength of this political movement that President Trump has created. So we'll take the hard-earned dollars of real Americans who will definitely turn out to vote on November the 5th, then Joe Biden's small circle of elite elitists, liberal elitists, who live in their mansions and their bubbles, but don't understand the issues that are impacting everyday Americans.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, that it comes on the same day that Joe Biden's second biggest political donor in 2020, Sam Bankman-Fried, was just sentenced to 25 years in prison for defrauding American citizens out of billions of dollars, much of which he gave quite a hefty sum to Democrats broadly and Joe Biden specifically. The Biden White House, the Biden campaign can't be loving that side by side today.
I'm sure they're not. And if it were a donor to President Trump's campaign, I can assure you our inboxes on Team Trump would be blown up with mainstream reporters questioning whether we would return the money, whether, all sorts of things. And I can guarantee the Biden campaign has faced no such similar questions today. That's
true. I've noticed. I was looking for that. You have to go back in time to find any news reporting on that subject. In fact, there's very little mention of it today. That this literally the second biggest donor to Biden's 2020 campaign was the guy who's now going to be serving 25 years in prison for robbing people.
Yep, exactly right. Imagine if that was one of President Trump's donors. There's such a double standard in the mainstream corporate press. It's absurd, but I think people see it. That's why the distrust in the media is at an all-time low in this country, unfortunately.
Barack Obama was on the flight today, headed in from Washington, D.C. into New York. He'll be there, of course, at this fundraiser this evening. We've seen reports from the New York Times that Obama is in a bit of a panic about Joe Biden's chances of even winning this election. He's now getting himself more involved actively in managing the campaign. What does that tell you, and are you at all concerned about Obama's role in this campaign?
Well, tonight in New York, you got the three stooges. You got Biden, you got Barack Hussein Obama, and you got crooked Clinton. So, no, we are not afraid or nervous at all about Obama trying to hit the campaign trail. He did it for Hillary in 2016, and look what happened. By the way, President Trump was outspent by Hillary Clinton in 2016 2-1, and he still had an epic landslide. So money does not mean victory when you have a candidate who can hardly walk up the stairs of Air Force One and can barely read off of a teleprompter. And that's what Obama and the Democrats are stuck with in Joe Biden. No amount of money, no amount of campaign stops from Obama and the Clintons will be able to help Joe Biden shuffle over the finish line. He is so weak. He shoots himself in the foot every single day, every time he speaks. And, independent Americans are swinging towards President Trump with a historic margin. There was a new Fox News poll last night. We're picking up independents by 14 points. President Trump's winning Hispanic Americans, which no Republican candidate in modern history has ever done. He's winning more than a quarter of the African American vote. I mean, if these numbers hold, and we have every intention of ensuring that they do, and we're confident that they will, November the 5th is going to be a very bad day for Biden and Obama and the Clintons and the entire Democrat establishment who hates Donald Trump so much and have done everything they possibly can to bring him down over the last 8 years.
I got to be honest, I love the phrase Biden shuffling across the finish line. I'm going to steal that going forward. I really like that.
Please do.
What do you think of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Running mate announcement this week? Is trying to get onto all these ballots. Democrats are trying across the country, trying to stop RFK from appearing on ballots. This has become a trend. Of course, the left is trying to stop all of Biden's political opponents, including Donald Trump, from appearing on the ballot. What do you make of Robert F. Kennedy's candidacy, and do you expect that it will help the Trump campaign?
Well, Robert F. Kennedy is a far-left Democrat, and so far-left Democrats in this country who don't like Joe Biden, because frankly no one does, well, now they have another option. Good for them. RFK is a radical environmentalist extremist. In fact, he has advocated for a national smart grid, which is unbelievable. I encourage your audience to go. There's a story actually today in the New York Post on this about how he feels about our energy industry. And he's actually advocated for a national smart grid that would be controlled by the federal government, and the federal government can choose when they can turn off the grid to conserve water and energy. So RFK Jr. wants the feds to control how long you can shower in your own home and how long you can keep your lights on. I mean, that's communism, if you ask me. I don't think that most free-thinking, capitalist, pro-freedom Americans would agree with RFK Jr. on that. He's also, a radical when it comes to issues like abortion and so many others. welfare, higher taxes, more regulation. He wants bigger government at the end of the day. And we've seen what the heavy hand of the federal government does to small businesses and to hardworking people. We've been experiencing it for the last 3 years with the record high inflation and the crippling effects of Bidenomics. So I think RFK Jr. is much more of an issue for Biden than it will be for President Trump. And if anyone's a far lefty in your audience, well, they should vote for him.
Okay, and then finally, can you give us a preview of what we should expect in the weeks to come from the Trump campaign? Again, we're talking to Karoline Leavitt, the National Press Secretary. What's coming from Donald Trump's campaign going forward here?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the president will be traveling to the great battleground states of Michigan and Wisconsin next week. We're so excited about that. The Rust Belt in 2 states that propelled President Trump to his historic defeat over Hillary in 2016. We'll also be announcing many more events in the coming days and weeks. The president will continue to travel all around the country, bringing his winning message to every corner of the country. The Democrats wish he would just be confined to a courtroom and defeated. We have, unfortunately, this sham witch hunt in New York supposedly going to begin on April 15th. So the president will continue to fight through all these witch hunts, fight for truth and justice, and he'll continue to hit the campaign trail. No one works harder than him, I can tell you that, being his national press secretary. I am many years younger than the former president, and it's even difficult for me to keep up with him. He works around the clock, and he does it because he loves this country so very much, and he is distraught and disgusted over what Joe Biden has done to it in the matter of just 3 years. So you'll continue to see from him and hear from him all the time. He'll do spontaneous events and visits like he did today, and he'll be out there for sure.
And is he still authoring all of his own Truth Social posts, or do you do that these days?
We do have a staff that chips in, but trust me, it's him most of the time. And I think you can tell when it's the president himself.
It doesn't take much of a detective to figure it out. I think it is pretty easy to assess. Karoline Leavitt, thank you very much. Again, National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign. Appreciate your time today. All right, let's go to the phones. Kevin, Manassas, line 4. Kevin, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon, Vince. Please forgive me, and I beg the forgiveness of that lady. I didn't catch her name, but I am so impressed.
Karoline Leavitt. Karoline Leavitt. She's the National Press Secretary for the Trump campaign.
Ms. Leavitt, you are a beautiful, I mean, not in a looking way, but communicator. You are a great spokesperson for President Trump. Contrast her to Karine Jean-Pierre or anyone the Democrats have speaking for them. Case closed. That woman is a great communicator and very impressive how she kept track of all the arguments and all the points that political people that we elect ought to be making every day for our citizens. But that lady is sharp, and I am very impressed, and we're going to do well if she's in charge of the campaign.
All right, well, we'll send along your compliments, Kevin. We'll send along your compliments as a sweetener to see if we can't get Trump back on the show or something. Thank you. That's really nice of you to say. And then Daniel's calling in from Annapolis, line 3. Daniel, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to make a comment. All this talk about Trump, being ahead, beating Joe Biden, independents going to Trump. I don't want anybody to get too confident that Trump has us wrapped up. I think everybody has to realize we need to play like we're 50 points behind and there's 2 minutes left in the game. Because we get overconfident and people slack off and say, well, he's got this. I'm not going to go out and vote. That's a mistake. Get out there and vote. Do your part. I'm going to be in the Maryland primary the 14th of May. And also the first Tuesday in November. Thank you.
I love that. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's exactly the right point. Overwhelm the polls this year. You've got to overwhelm them no matter where you are in the country, no matter how lunatic blue the district is. Overwhelm those polls. Hey, the great one, Mark Levin, is up next here on WMAL.